In a swift reaction, however, the People's Democratic Party leadership recognized by INEC has dismissed claims surrounding the 103rd National Executive Committee meeting organized by the Adolphus Wabara-led Board of Trustees, describing it as invalid and misleading. In a statement issued by the party's National Publicity Secretary, Jogudo Mohammed, no such NEC meeting was convened by the recognized leadership of the party. According to the PDP, it's contradictory for individuals who previously opposed the idea of a caretaker committee to now claim to have constituted one, describing the move as lacking credibility and driven by self-interest. The party also cited alleged violations of the Electoral Act of 2026, stressing that the mandatory 21-day notice to the Independent National Electoral Commission was not observed, nor was there evidence of the Commission's participation as required by law. And joining me now is a member of the newly constituted Interim National Working Committee, INI, and Memebong. Mr. Memebong, thank you for joining us on the news tonight. Let's start here. Based on the Supreme Court judgment, who would you say legally controlled the PDP today? And based on what precisely have you come up with that decision?
Glad to see you again through this medium. Okay, so clearly, like you asked about the Supreme Court judgments, the Supreme Court is the final court in the land. And when they give judgments, judgments of courts are not made in vacuum. So the Supreme Court, on the date of the judgment, there were 2 appeals and 2 cross appeals. So on the 2 appeals, the Supreme Court had dismissed the appeals by majority decision, 3-2, 3 of them saying that, well, they won't even delve into the substance of the matter. They will be talking about the issue of content. Incidentally, their colleagues, 2 of them asked that the issue of content was not raised by any of the parties, and therefore the Supreme Court ought not. It is in the tradition of the Supreme Court to warn other courts not to raise issues and resolve them without addresses being taken. But that's the judgment of the court, and we have respect for it. The Supreme Court also dismissed the cross appeals that we filed trying to overturn the judgment of the Court of Appeal on the recognition of the suspension of Anyanwu Ajibade and Co. It dismissed it. So what that means is that if you take us back to November 15, the morning of November 15, where Damagun was still in charge, as at that time the national chairman was Damagun, the national secretary was not Anyanwu, it was Koshode. Why that is so is because on November 1, the Damagun-led executive suspended Anyanwu and Co. And the Court of Appeal said that it recognized that suspension being a disciplinary action, which is an internal affair of a party which they cannot inquire into. And therefore, that suspension starts. In the judgment of the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal also said that they have seen an evidence of suspension, which was communicated to INEC, but they have not seen any evidence of the lifting of that suspension. And so the Court of Appeal agreed to that, and having dismissed the cross appeal by the Supreme Court, that becomes the law. So to understand this is the fact that it was this same Anyanwu who on the 3rd wrote to INEC, informing INEC that he had counter-suspended Damagun, and at that point he had no authority to exercise the powers in the office. So he could not have convened the meeting that purportedly counter-suspended. So if he couldn't do that, that was the first day the name Abdurrahman came up, meaning that the origin of Abdurrahman's supposed authority is faulty because the person who coronated him had no powers to so act. And so you now see the metamorphosis from acting national chairman to caretaker to now a purported convention that was held. So when you look at it, that you're building a skyscraper on a sandy foundation, it has to collapse. So that is why the Board of Trustees, who are empowered by our Constitution, as the conscience of the party, as the owners of the assets of the party, as people who can intervene in times like that. That's why they took over the party. And correct. When they talk about notice, they should go and ask INEC. 21 days mandatory notice was given for this NEC meeting. And so, I mean, these are issues that we also have a strategy to ensure that, and you see that even when we had suspended Anyanwu, INEC refused to change the name. Whereas that is an internal affair of a party.
Mr. Memombago.
INEC seems to have a lot of vested interest in PDP matters. But
you know that it can get confusing following the PDP story. As a member yourself, it can weary you following what has transpired before now. But what the other side is saying is that your process is dead on arrival because you failed to notify INEC with the mandatory 21-day notice. I think I heard you say you actually gave INEC that notice. But the big question is, was INEC present at that BOT-led meeting? And at what point was that decision made that enabled you to have given a 21-day notice?
And they cannot deny that they weren't served. So whether they attend or not, even the Constitution, even the Electoral Act cannot compel. Your duty is to give notice. It's not your duty to compel attendance. And there are plethora
so
of
INEC wasn't present. Is that what you're saying?
Absence. Pardon?
Are you saying INEC wasn't present?
I can't hear you well, but there are plethora of cases where the presence or absence of INEC has neither validated or invalidated.
No, I'm asking that was INEC present? Was INEC present?
Well, they were not. We didn't see them. If they came, then we don't know. We didn't see them, but we did what we needed to do, which was to give them notice. And their presence or absence does not validate or invalidate. It only because even if they are there and you do what is unconstitutional, when it gets to court, it will be struck down. So that is where we are. We have served them notice. We have taken decisions. We would communicate again to them. And as the days go by, we've started the sales of form. We've issued our guidelines. We've issued our timetable. And people are beginning to, people who desire to partake in this election as an opposition through the authentic PDP are doing so. They're already getting on board and purchasing forms. And we are using technology too. We are not bringing everyone to Abuja. There's no need to come to Abuja to buy a form. We are using technology to make sure that people can get their forms online, they can fill their forms, they can return their forms, and all of those processes, we are deploying technology to it. And so we can assure you that where we are is we have mapped our strategy to ensure that we can have candidates filled as we go on. And in the process, whether INEC will recognize or not is a matter of fact, a matter of time. And as we proceed, we'll see where that leads us to. But we're on the course of making sure that people who want to contest on the platform of the PDP, who have indicated interest, who have waited this long, will have an opportunity to do so on the authentic PDP. And I'm sure that there's no one in Nigeria today who doesn't know the PDP that is an opposition party or the PDP that is an appendage of the APC. And so if people want to contest, they have a clear choice of where they want to go to, and that's not a problem. But what we are saying is that in the circumstance, the interpretation of the operationalization of the Supreme Court judgment and all the judgments rising from Omotosho and Lifu and Abdul Malik, which arrived at the Supreme Court, is to the effect that PDP did not, as of that time it gave the judgment, have leadership. And therefore, the BOT had to intervene. And NEC today, NEC was requisitioned by 2/3 majority of NEC members, which is a provision in our constitution. And having requisitioned that meeting and given 21 days notice because we're going to discuss about leadership of the party, that meeting held and took the decision that it needed to take.
Right now, Nigerians are saying two NECs, two narratives, and effectively two PDPs. I guess time will tell where these roads lead the party. Good place to leave it. Judah Magwe, thank you for your time.